Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center's Quarterly Funding Opportunities webinar. Just a few logistic housekeeping items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have a question, please submit it in the chat box, and we will get to as many questions at the end of the webinar as time allows. We are also recording this webinar, and we will be posting that recording to MassCEC's website momentarily, probably within a few days or so after the completion of today's webinar. And at the end, there will be a slide with contact information should you have any specific questions that you'd like to contact us about. In this webinar, we will be covering two MassCEC programs that are currently accepting technology innovation proposals. As a note, MassCEC does offer webinars just like this, approximately once every quarter, and we aim to cover as many programs that are of timely relevance to that time period. Today, we'll be discussing MassCEC's Catalyst and AmplifyMass programs. I am Leslie Nash. I'm a project manager here at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. In just a moment, I will be providing a brief overview of what MassCEC does and the programs that we offer. We are also joined today by a representative from our partner organization, Michelle Bernier from the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center, who is a commercialization program manager there and helps us co-administer and operate our Catalyst program. Lastly, I am also joined today by Ariel Horowitz, the MassCEC Director of Technology Development, and she will be presenting on MassCEC's AmplifyMass program. As you can see by the slide up on the screen, MassCEC's mission is to grow the state's clean energy industry while helping to meet the Commonwealth's clean energy, economic development, and climate goals. Our mission is threefold. We invest in programs that increase renewable energy adoption. We connect industry employers, job seekers, students, anyone in the clean energy industry. And we also support and spur innovation through infrastructure, funding, and technology development support, which we will be highlighting in this webinar today. MassCEC's Innovation and Industry Support Division offers a suite of programs that fulfill its mission by supporting clean tech startups and researchers at various stages. This slide highlights all of those programs. The blue boxes that you see up on the screen are grant programs where we will fund a specific project or company to complete a specific project or thing. The green boxes that you see up on the screen are our investment programs where MassCEC will make various size investments in the company. Starting from the left, just a quick overview of some of these programs. Like I mentioned earlier, the Catalyst and Amplify programs are the ones we will be talking about today. The Catalyst program is an early stage prototyping grant program that offers grants up to $65,000. Our AmplifyMass program offers up to $500,000 in cost share funding to companies or researchers that are pursuing a prime award. That prime award can be either federal or non-federal, such as DOE or NSF grants. Next, we have Accelerate Mass in the middle green box, which provides up to $150,000 in convertible notes to clean energy graduates of approved and eligible accelerator programs. Of a similar company stage, we have Innovate Mass in the blue box next to Accelerate, which provides up to $250,000 to demonstration projects of new clean energy technologies. As the company and the technologies mature, MassCEC offers equity investments of approximately $500,000 and venture debt investments between $100,000 and $1 million. On the far right of this slide, we have MassCEC's Deploy Mass program, which facilitates the adoption of clean energy technologies at public project sites. Along the entire x-axis on the bottom, you'll see a large, thin blue bar for our workforce development programs. MassCEC funds interns at all of these companies' stages. These are the two programs we will be focusing on during this webinar. As I mentioned earlier, we are joined on this webinar today by our partner, the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center, who works with MassCEC to co-administer and operate the Catalyst program. As you can see up here, the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center, or MTTC, assists entrepreneurs within the state of Massachusetts with licensing or creating startups. They are also threefold. They fulfill their mission by providing entrepreneurs with coaching, feedback programs. They connect to those entrepreneurs, the technology transfer offices, the investors, companies, industry, by providing conferences and industry showcase events. And lastly, they train. They provide training for technology transfer offices with best practices, how to handle intellectual property, etc. I will now introduce Michelle Bernier from the MTTC to discuss MassCEC's Catalyst program.
Hi, everyone. So let's talk about the Catalyst program. Next slide. As Leslie described, this diagram, you can see that Catalyst is the smallest award and earliest stage program that is offered. So if the Catalyst program seems a little too early for you, then you may want to consider one of the later stage programs. And if in doubt, I suggest contacting Leslie or Ariel, and they can help you decide which program makes the most sense for you. Next slide. So what is the Catalyst program? We provide grants of $65,000 along with technology support from the Massachusetts Technology Transfer Center to Massachusetts-based early-stage companies and research institutions. Students are also welcome to apply who are working with a principal investigator. These grants are for those working on clean energy and water energy nexus innovation projects. We run this program twice a year, spring and fall. So if the timing isn't good for you right now, consider waiting until the early spring to apply. And our current round has a due date of September 24th at 4 p.m. for proposals. Next slide. For the application, we ask that you provide the following items: an overview of the technology and why it's important, clean energy impact, and this is to be included for both clean energy and water energy nexus applications. If you submit a water-related proposal without showing any energy savings, then it will not be selected for funding. And by clean energy impact, we mean greenhouse gases avoidance from cost declines, efficiency improvements, etc. We will need the commercialization potential and your proposed business model. The details of what you plan to do with the grant funding, and this project should be planned very carefully. A project budget summary, and information on team members. And all these items included here are included in our template that we provide. Okay, so what are we looking for? We're looking for proposals with a high likelihood of success, and those would have the following attributes. For technical merit, the technology would be promising, new, and disruptive. We're not looking for new ways to use solar panels here. We're looking for novel technologies. The market is large and or growing. You know your customer and what they want and how you can deliver it. For the project plan, the project selected would be achievable and the results would be meaningful to the next step of your commercialization plan. You would also have a knowledgeable team who knows how to commercialize your technology. And the technology also needs to fit our program. And we're looking for technologies with clean energy and water impacts that can be measurable through the reduction of fossil fuel use. And the proposal would have to show a potential for follow-on funding. And by this, we mean a likelihood of market entry for university projects and the likelihood of attracting private investment for startups. Next slide. What do we mean by prototype? A prototype is a first model of something from which other forms are developed or copied. It is not basic research. We are looking for early stage design, development, and or validation of your technology. You can test a concept to validate your design. And you're creating a thing, not an idea. And it would be real working system or a product. And it can also be generating data to show an invention works. Next slide. And what do we mean by clean energy impact? We use the definition provided by the general laws in Massachusetts, namely advanced and applied technologies that significantly reduce or eliminate the use of energy from non-renewable sources. And this includes energy efficiency, demand response, energy conservation, and those technologies powered in whole or in part by the sun, wind, water, biomass, etc. To qualify, your technology must show a clear path to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and for example, reducing cost or improving performance of carbon-free generation, energy efficiency and process energy reduction, and grid modernization for easier integration of renewables. And then here's some examples of clean energy, examples of projects without clean energy impact, and that would be projects that improve the economics of using fossil fuels, projects that have minimal impact on reducing greenhouse gases compared to what is being used now, water treatment technologies that have no substantial energy impact, and projects that reduce pollution and improve the environment but have no fossil fuel reduction. Okay. So we took a look over the past applications and pulled out frequent comments from the reviewers so we can try to replicate the positive comments and try to avoid the negative comments going forward. For technical merit, we suggest try to explain things in layman's terms in a clear and concise way. Explain the specific application of your technology, and if it is applied research, demonstrate that you're solving a problem and that it is not basic research. You are not writing for an academic journal. If you do not show the end goal or that you're focused on solving a problem, the application will sound like it's general research and it won't be funded. Try not to overuse acronyms. In this point, I cannot stress enough, proofread the final copy. Accept all the edits and save it as a PDF file. Every round, we receive several applications that are obvious that no one bothered to read the final copy. The proposal is the only thing that represents you, so make sure that it's a clean, professional copy. To receive a good score for your commercialization potential, know who your customers are and what they want. Know who your target market is and who are your competitors. Hopefully your technology is protectable, so mention any IP you have. Discuss your business model and how you commercialize your technology. And if you have any letters of support, include them in the appendix. You want to avoid being too vague when discussing your market. We will be looking for what you list as your target market, so if you leave it out, it will be noticed. If you truly believe that you have no competition, then maintaining the status quo is your competition. A strong project plan is one that is meaningful and will contribute to commercialization. Something should happen once the project is completed, such as finding more funding, a potential partner, or customers. So you may want to work backwards. What are your investors and customers asking for, and how can you give it to them? Your project should be what they're asking for. You will want to avoid using general milestones without measurable items, and pick a plan that will work within the budget and time frame. Be realistic. You will want to show that you have a good team. We're looking for business experience as well as technical experience. It is very rare that one person has all the knowledge needed for commercialization. So tell us who will be contributing, what they'll be contributing, and what their background is. And if you are working alone, include any advisors or mentors you have. Tell us the backgrounds and relative experience, because we won't know unless you tell us. Next slide. Some frequently asked questions. In order to apply, you must be a principal investigator at a Massachusetts research institution or a Massachusetts-based company with no more than 4 employees and with less than $1 million in funding, grants, or revenue. And if you have a question about having enough of your company in the state of Massachusetts, contact us and we can discuss it. The majority of your company must be here. You may also be a student applicant if you have a principal investigator who is willing to oversee your project. We will give up to 5 Clean Tech Awards and up to 2 Water Challenge Awards, and each award will be up to $65,000. And again, follow the general laws of Massachusetts for the clean energy definition. If you have any questions about your specific technology, if it's eligible or not, please contact one of us and we can walk you through it. For the Water Challenge, we'll be granted up to 2 awards for technologies that impact the intersection of water and energy. And again, the awards are for up to $65,000. And during the duration of the projects for both clean tech and water awards, it should be 1 year. And we want to show you a success story. This is SolidEnergy Systems. They applied for the program back in 2012 when the award amount was only $40,000. They have an anode-free lithium metal battery, which doubles energy density while operating safely at high temperatures. They used their funds to build prototypes and ran safety tests on them. They have since raised $17 million in funding with a Series B round in 2016. They've hired 25 employees and filed 20 patents. And they plan to launch their battery technology in drones, smartphones, and electric cars. Next slide. For timeline and logistics, go to the MassCEC website for the application and the template. And in order to keep the program as fair as possible, we'll be collecting all questions by Monday and then posting all the answers by September 3rd. The due date for applications is September 24th at 4 p.m. So perhaps you want to use that day for the review and having other people review your proposal for any errors. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time to have someone review the final copy. From there, the applications will be reviewed by our committee and sent out to the external reviewers. Finalists will be notified by November 5th and will be providing coaching sessions during November. The finalists will provide a pitch during the week of December 10th, and the winners will be notified in January. And I will now pass it over to Ariel, who will discuss AmplifyMass.
Thank you, Michelle. Before we pass to Ariel, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you have any questions, particularly on the first half, to please submit them in the questions or chat box in your webinar, and we will answer all the questions at the end of both portions. And now I will pass this to Ariel.
Thanks, Leslie. So now we're going to talk about AmplifyMass, a program which is structured quite differently from the Catalyst program. AmplifyMass provides cost share of grants of up to $500,000 to recipients, Massachusetts recipients of prime grants from outside of the Commonwealth, which I'll go into a bit more in a moment. As you've seen on this slide a couple of times, AmplifyMass is one of our earlier stage programs, so it's one of our only programs that will actually fund research in a university context, but it actually will, in fact, span all the way up through commercialization type projects as well. The AmplifyMass program, as we mentioned, provides cost share or adder grants for recipients of a prime award. And what that means is that applicants must be receiving funding for their project from an agency outside of sort of public agencies in Massachusetts. So that could be the federal government. We most often get applications from recipients of DOE grants, NSF grants, and similar sort of federal funds. It doesn't have to be a federal grant. It just has to not be other public money in Massachusetts. The awards can range from $5,000 to $500,000, depending on a variety of review criteria that we'll go over in a moment. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis. So unlike the Catalyst program where we run 2 defined solicitations every year, we accept applications for AmplifyMass at any time during the year. You can submit an application to AmplifyMass at any time sort of in your prime award application process. However, we will not accept an application that has already contracted with the prime funding agency. The reason for that is that it's important as a public agency that our funding is filling a gap. So our understanding is that if you've already contracted, you already have your cost share in place, and therefore the role of our funds is not as important. Eligible applicants must be based in Massachusetts. Company applicants must qualify as a small business. And then we also accept applications from Massachusetts-based universities, nonprofit research institutions. Unlike for the Catalyst program, we do not accept applications from students in AmplifyMass, so you have to be a full-time researcher. The application requirements cover pretty similar ground, so we do need a description of the technology that you're proposing to work with. That includes sort of the context for the technology, what's the state of the art right now, and how is your proposal different. We do want to know about the commercialization potential of the technology, and then we also ask applicants to submit something that we call a total addressable carbon analysis that I'll go into in more detail in a moment. Then we also want more information about the project itself, which includes who's actually conducting the project, what's the scope of work associated with the project, what's going to be built, tested, installed, where, how much of it, what do the applicants foresee as the outcomes of the project, and sort of where does that get you? And then we also have a budget template that we ask people to fill out. And uniquely of our programs, in addition for AmplifyMass, we do require that people submit their full technical proposal to the prime funding agency. And that's in part because the AmplifyMass application itself, we try to keep quite light. It's a relatively short application, but because these are often quite technical projects, we do need to see the full technical write-up. We also need to know the status of that proposal because all AmplifyMass awards are contingent upon receipt of the prime grant that's associated with that application. So what is a total addressable carbon analysis? Many of you may be familiar with a total addressable market analysis. That's an analysis that startup companies will do to show how big they can grow and how much of a market they think they can actually capture. What we're asking for is a very similar thing, but instead of thinking about profitability, we're thinking about clean energy impact. So the total addressable carbon analysis is an estimate of the total greenhouse gas emissions that can be reduced, avoided, or remediated if your project or technology were to scale to a large adoption. A strong total addressable carbon analysis makes a clear connection between the project that you're talking about and a path to substantial greenhouse gas emission reductions. And also demonstrates a realistic understanding of how your technology would actually scale. So what assumptions are necessary to get you to the point where you are addressing a large wedge of carbon. We also want to see sort of a clear chain of logic and strong quantitative research that's mostly gleaned from credible public data sources. We suggest a couple of public data sources in the application itself. That would include, for example, the Energy Information Administration that's run by the US DOE. One question that we get a lot on this is whether or not we have a lower limit, sort of you must address at least this much carbon to be eligible for AmplifyMass, and the answer is that at this time we do not have such a limit, but it is important to us to know sort of the risk-reward profile of different projects. So, for example, if your project can address 100% of the carbon associated with making, for example, dry erase markers, that's great, but dry erase markers are not really one of the major sources of greenhouse gas emissions globally. So even if it might be 100% of that carbon, depending on the amount of funding that you're asking for, we may or may not find that to be a particularly compelling sort of path to dealing with climate change. We also wanted to spend some time going through the budget template that we asked people to fill out because we recently, just this week, in fact, uploaded a new version that we think will be hopefully pretty clear and easy for people to fill out. So we're asking for basically 3 pieces of information in the AmplifyMass budget. There are essentially 3 sections. This is the first section. We want to know what is the prime grant that you're receiving. So who is giving you that grant? How much money is it? And then who is getting that grant? So a lot of the time for larger DOE or ARPA, for example, there will be a project team that's receiving the grant instead of a single applicant. And so we do want to see the allocation of the prime grant funds among all of the project participants, and that includes the person applying for AmplifyMass. Then the second section here is sort of a breakdown of what's the other funding associated with the project other than the prime grant. So that would include the cost share requirement. Many DOE grants, for example, require that applicants bring some percentage of the project budget as cost share. Then we also want to know how much additional funding you've budgeted for the project, which would include a sort of discretionary cost share, or maybe there's just an adder that you want to a grant that doesn't have a cost share requirement. We, of course, want to know how much money the applicants are asking for from us. And then we want to know how much funding is being devoted to the project from other sources that are not the prime grant and are not sort of MassCEC grant requests, which other sources of funding are not always present, but to the extent that they are, we do want to know about them. So all that combined ends up with the total project budget. So we're defining the total project budget here as the total of the prime grant, the required cost share, and any discretionary additional funds. And that, sort of by definition, has to be equal to the total of the prime grant, the money that's coming from us, and the money that's coming from other project participants that are neither us nor the prime grant agency. We also asked applicants to estimate sort of the amount of funding on the project that's being quote unquote leveraged in Massachusetts. That's the total project budget that's going to be spent in Massachusetts but isn't coming from MassCEC. So for example, if you have a grant that's going to 5 different project partners, 3 of whom are in Massachusetts, we would consider that all the funding that's being received by the partners in Massachusetts to be funding that would be leveraged by a MassCEC grant. And then finally, the third section of our budget template is just a breakdown of project expenses between for staff time, patent filing costs, subcontractors, direct costs, travel, things like that. And then we want to see that broken down by allocation among the different sources of funding for the project. So again, a similar discussion of sort of what makes a strong application as for the Catalyst program. We do want to see technical merit. So we want to know that the technology that you're talking about or the science, that there's sort of a strong theoretical backing to it, but that it's going to be new and disruptive to the industry. That there's a strong potential impact to the energy sector, or sort of a strong clean energy impact. We also want to see that there's a strong potential impact to Massachusetts. That doesn't mean that the primary sort of market for the technology has to be in Massachusetts, but we do want to see that there would be some benefit to the Commonwealth from the project being done. So for example, a new company is formed, people are hired, other things along those lines. Of course, if your project does speak to a Massachusetts-specific energy problem, then that is also of interest to us. We also want to see that our support is going to be valuable to the project, that we're filling a meaningful gap, and that the team members are qualified to actually conduct the project. So similar to Catalyst, we do care that the project has a high likelihood of success. In order to fit into this program in particular, we want to know that there's going to be a strong clean energy impact, and that both the industry, the target industry, and the applicant team are going to learn something important from doing the project, so that the results will sort of disseminate out into the broader world in a way that's important and meaningful. We also want to see a strong potential for market entry. So for companies, that would mean improving your competitiveness in the market that you're already in, or entering a new market. For research projects at universities or research institutions, we want to see a clear path to industrial relevance. That doesn't mean that the research has to be translational. It doesn't mean that you have to be spinning out a company immediately, but we do want to see that it's at least speaking to a real sort of outside of the lab concern. We also, in this program, care about a strong leverage funds factor. So we want to see that for every dollar that we're putting in, there's a proportional amount of funding coming into the Commonwealth from the prime grant or other project partners. Some tips for making a strong proposal. Again, we want to see clear positive impacts to the Commonwealth, a demonstrated value of MassCEC support, strong clean energy impact. We do want to see that the higher the grant request is, the more leverage funds you're bringing in, and that's because this is a rolling program and we have a set budget over the course of our fiscal year. There's an opportunity cost to us, and indeed to the other applicants, of us funding a very large grant request. So we want to see that opportunity cost matched with fund leveraging, sort of economic development for the Commonwealth. For a research proposal, we do want to see that the idea is disruptive, and again, that there's a clear path from research to commercialization, that the PI has actually thought about this and how to make it industrially relevant. We do like, in general, to see our funds being used primarily for support of incremental PhD students, for example, or capacity building at an institution, as opposed to something like institutional overhead. For applications from a company, we want to see a clear and logical business plan for what you're proposing to do, and that would include, even if only early stage, it would include some amount of cost or economic modeling, clear identification of partners and potential customers, and that our funds are used for things like new hires and equipment. Unsuccessful proposals tend to not be able to demonstrate sort of why our funds are needed for the project. The clean energy impact is small, or it seems too risky for the amount of funding that's being provided. If we send the project out for a technical review and the review comes back very negatively, that we generally have a hard time proceeding with. Similarly, if a project proposes a high grant request but is not leveraging very much funding, that tends to be difficult for us to proceed on. For research proposals, we generally won't fund very basic research with limited sort of industrial relevance. If the project has unclear differentiation, by which we mean that we can't really understand what's making this project different from other projects that are going on in the field, and why it would be particularly impactful, that tends to be less compelling to us, and of course, high overhead rates. For startup proposals, again, if the business model is unclear, or we think that the applicant demonstrates a lack of understanding of what their market is or of the competitive landscape, that tends to be something that's hard for us to proceed with. And then similarly, if we don't think that the budget is very well justified, or if the funds are being spent on something that is not really that compelling for us to support. One other thing to mention on this is that we do occasionally get proposals in where the application to us is very, very general, the sort of AmplifyMass budget form, and the technical proposal to the prime award organization is very heavily redacted, which we understand why we get those proposals. However, we do want to note that it's very difficult for us to review an application favorably if we don't have a clear understanding of exactly what it is that the applicant is proposing to do, and what differentiates that proposal. So just to go over the review process briefly, as soon as your application is submitted, we start going over our internal sort of threshold review to check whether or not the proposal meets our basic eligibility requirements. We also send most applications out for a technical review with an external reviewer. Just as a note for applicants to keep in mind logistically, from application submission to award is usually at the very least 3 months. So please plan accordingly. An average timeline tends to be more around 4 months. Applications that make it through those sort of initial stages of review are then sent to an internal award selection committee, which competitively reviews several proposals each month, and considers things like, why does this project need MassCEC funding? Does this fit into our institutional goals? What's the incremental value that we offer and that the project offers us? And sort of how does this project fit into the program's overall budget? Projects are notified of their status, that they've either been awarded or rejected from the program after selection. And if they're awarded, note that contracting can take up to a month, depending on how long it takes the awardee and MassCEC to negotiate on a scope. Our award is contingent on receipt of the prime award, as I mentioned. Once contracted, our contract tends to tie into the prime award term dates and deliverables. So most of the scope of work associated with an AmplifyMass grant is identical to the scope of work that's associated with the prime grant itself. We do add a little bit of sort of MassCEC specific reporting and deliverables, but they're usually a pretty light lift. Just a couple of frequently asked questions on this program. What defines a Massachusetts-based company? As Michelle said earlier, we're happy to sort of help people consider whether or not they qualify for this if you contact us. But essentially, the way we define it is that you have to have a majority of your corporate headquarters, sales, R&D, and manufacturing in Massachusetts. The award amount can vary between $500,000 and $500,000, and the review process can range from 3 to 6 months. Eligibility requirements, again, this program is open to small businesses based in Massachusetts or to Massachusetts-based nonprofits or universities. It does not include grad students. You should submit your application to the AmplifyMass program. Ideally, the ideal time is concurrently with your submission to the Prime Award organization or shortly thereafter. However, you're eligible anytime up through contracting with the Prime funding agency. And again, we'll refer you to MGL Chapter 23J for a definition of clean energy as far as MassCEC is concerned. So our success story under this program is NewGrid. This is actually a company that spun out of Boston University after receiving an AmplifyMass award in a university context. We love when that happens. And since then, the company has received a Catalyst grant, has been featured in several scientific publications, and received a $100,000 MassVentures award as well.
Thank you, Ariel. I'm going to take a really brief moment just to highlight some other funding opportunities that might not necessarily be at MassCEC, but might be of interest to some of you who are on the webinar this afternoon. So that top list there, we have a couple from DOE. All of these have application deadlines approaching, so please take note if any of these are of interest. And again, these are just a few that we found that tend to kind of fall in the clean energy space, but there are, of course, others. At the very bottom, you can see that MassCEC does have a solicitation opening somewhere around October of this year of 2018. So our Innovate Mass program, as you remember from the earlier slide, which had all of MassCEC's program, that is more of a demonstration site program versus the earlier stage programs that we've been talking about today. So if you have a product at your company or research institution or something that's a little more commercialized that you're ready to demonstrate in the field, the Innovate Mass program might be of interest to you. We will now pause for questions, and also we'll leave up this slide so that way you can have a kind of a cheat sheet of where the program materials are located for both the Catalyst program and the Amplify program, as well as our email addresses, which will reach all of us that have been on the line today. So I'm going to pause for 1 second while I look for some questions. Okay, so we'll start with one of the questions we see. Someone was asking if they're studying at the University of Rhode Island, or, you know, we could compare this to a broader question, if you're studying at an out-of-state institution in any way, but some of the founders are Massachusetts residents. I think it depends on the program per se, but the company, if it's a company that's formed, then it has to be Massachusetts-based. If it's a research institution, it also has to be Massachusetts-based for both Catalyst and Amplify. However, if you're far enough along in your product development or your technology development, the Innovate Mass program, the Deploy Mass program, you might be of interest to. That has a little bit looser requirement with the origin of the developers. So you could look on our website for the Deploy Mass program, but that would not be an eligible case for the Catalyst or the Amplify programs we talked about today. Yeah,
just to clarify that, in general, I would say if you're a Massachusetts resident that's studying at an out-of-state institution, then no, the research sort of has to be, the research dollars would have to be spent in Massachusetts, is how we would set that.
Okay, we have another question that says, what is MassCEC's definition of a prime grant?
So MassCEC's definition of a prime grant is any grant funding that an eligible applicant is receiving from any entity that is not a Massachusetts state public entity. So that could include the federal government. It could also include foundation funding, for example. It could even include funding from outside of the United States, or grant funding from a private company. We do not include loans or investments for equity.
We have a few questions along similar sense, asking if we're going to be sending out the slides or sharing this presentation. So yes, we will be posting the webinar on our website, and we'll be sure to email everyone who attended today that when they're posted, so you can directly download the posting and share them with any of your affiliates that were mentioned in the question. So yes, we will be sharing.
We got a question that asked whether or not solar applications count as clean energy. Yes, we do consider solar energy to be clean energy. The only caveat there is that we, as Michelle mentioned, we want to see that the project is going to reduce emissions compared to business as usual. So if your proposal is to say, for example, here's a place where people in the past were not able to access electricity, there's no sort of compelling business case if you ignore solar energy to provide electricity in that location, but we're now going to provide electricity there using solar panels. That tends to not be as compelling to us, just again because you're not really avoiding emissions. The exceptions would potentially be in developing countries. Those proposals tend to be a little bit complex, but we do again want to see emissions reductions compared to business as usual.
Some other questions that we've received at MassCEC or MTTC has received elsewhere that might not have necessarily been submitted today that we wanted to make sure we touched on since we have a few moments. One question we get a lot or we encounter confusion about is whether or not when you're applying to either our Catalyst or AmplifyMass programs or any of our MassCEC programs, what level of information you should share with us. For instance, should you include confidential information? MassCEC is a public agency, so is MTTC, cannot say that today. So the short answer is no. You should not share confidential or protected information with us. We are subject to public records laws, meaning if someone submits a request, we do have to share things that we have received via email or have on file or anything in writing. If Ariel alluded to earlier, sometimes we get overly redacted proposals, and while we certainly appreciate the privacy and the protections of your technology, we also do need to have visibility into what you're doing. So oftentimes, if you're nervous that everything is very protected and you don't want to share that information with us, we can offer to set up a call and you could explain over the phone to us. We don't have a record, but at least we're able to evaluate the technical merit.
We tend to only do that under AmplifyMass Catalyst because of the way the solicitation is run. We unfortunately can't set up those calls. But yeah, so I guess again, as Leslie mentioned, the short answer to this is that applicants should do their best to describe their technology clearly, but should refrain from sending us confidential or proprietary information.
And Michelle, if you have anything to add, you're welcome to jump in too.
Yeah, I agree. We also send out the proposals to external reviewers, and they do not sign a non-disclosure agreement. So just keep that in mind. It's kind of difficult to find, to walk that fine line of including enough information but not too much. But we understand that difficulty.
Great. So then some kind of application-specific logistical questions that we tend to receive a lot of. So on the Catalyst program side, as Michelle mentioned, we do have an application template, and oftentimes we get asked if the title page that's part of that template counts towards the page limit, since we do have a page limit for that application. The answer is no, the first page does not count. It's the first page plus the subsequent pages. and all of those should be under that predetermined specified page limit.
We do have a page limit of 11 pages for the proposal text and a maximum length of 5 pages for the attachments. So you have 16 pages total, not including that title page.
Okay, another Catalyst program question. Is it possible for someone at MassCEC to review the proposal prior to the due date? Michelle, I'll let you jump in on that one.
No. Short answer is no. We want to keep the program as fair as possible for everyone involved, and we cannot look at everyone's ahead of time and give them, our feedback. So we will not be reviewing anyone's proposal. But if you have a specific question, we're more than happy to talk to you about it. We also have, if you don't find the answer today, we also have some office hours coming up where we'll be there in person, where you can ask us a question that is related to your specific proposal.
Michelle?
And I would just say that also applies for AmplifyMass. So we do get this question a lot, indeed for all of our proposals, as to whether or not we can give sort of an up or down temperature on an idea based on a phone call or sort of a pre-review of an application. Unfortunately, we really can't. We do need to go through the entire review process in order to be able to give somebody a disposition on their application. We can answer questions on eligibility. We just can't really answer whether or not this seems like an idea that we would fund, or whether or not it seems like a strong proposal, things like that.
Sticking on the Catalyst theme, that was the first part of the presentation for those of you who are attending, just to make sure you get your programs kind of straight. Another question we tend to get a lot of, which I'll defer to Michelle, is can two groups submit an application together?
So we do encourage partnerships and collaborations. However, you still need to follow the guidelines of, if it's a company proposal, that there would still have to be less than 4 members on the team. It would still have to be based in Massachusetts, and it would still have to have acquired less than $1 million in financing, grants, and revenues. So as long as you could still do that, you're welcome to have some type of combination between companies or groups, but you would still need to follow the criteria for the program.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And one last Catalyst-specific question. Does all the money have to be spent within the state of Massachusetts?
No. Though that's our preference, of course, is that it is spent in Massachusetts. But if you have a special testing organization or a manufacturing company that is outside of Massachusetts or outside of the country, we've seen that before too, then that's perfectly fine as well to put in the budget.
Thank you, Michelle.
And I'll just address those same questions for Amplify quickly. The question of whether or not all the money has to be spent in Massachusetts, yeah, it's the same answer as for Michelle. The key here is that our checks have to be sent out to a Massachusetts entity, a Massachusetts organization, where that organization then spends the funding is really primarily dependent on what makes sense for the project.
Great. Some additional questions. These are more geared towards Amplify, but again, Michelle, if you find that they're relevant to Catalyst, please feel free to jump in after Ariel. So if someone is planning on submitting multiple concept papers to a funding opportunity announcement, via either DOE or something along those lines, if they're doing multiple concept papers on different technologies, can they apply to Amplify for every one of those different concept papers?
So yes, you are eligible to apply for submit a different application for what would essentially be different grants that you would receive from the prime award organization, even if they're all responses to the same solicitation. However, I should note that it's very rare for us to give multiple grants to the same entity concurrently. And so as a result of that, if there is a connection between the two such that you can sort of scope them as sort of multiple pieces of the same project, then that is also an option that you have. We don't restrict an Amplify award to be relevant to just a single prime grant, for example.
And kind of a combination of questions. If you do have partners on your application that are based outside Massachusetts, is that okay?
Yes, so you can, for Amplify, as sort of came up when I was talking about the budget template, you can apply as a member of a team, and not all members of that team have to be based in Massachusetts. However, the entity that is applying to us must be based in Massachusetts. So as far as we're concerned, we need to see like one primary applicant, that's the person that we would be executing a contract with and the person that we would be receiving invoices from, and that entity must be Massachusetts based.
We did just receive a question, somebody who only just joined the webinar. Apologies, apparently there was a different time posted somewhere, so we apologize that you missed it. But to the person who submitted the question, yes, we will be sharing this webinar recording on MassCEC's website, and we will email all the registrants to the webinar once we have posted it. So hopefully within the next few days, week or so, you should get an email from us with that posting. So another question we tend to get in many of MassCEC's program is, can someone submit an application for the same project to both Amplify and another MassCEC program, for instance, Catalyst or Innovate or one of our other ones?
Yes, you are welcome to submit an application for the same project to multiple MassCEC programs, as long as that project is sort of eligible for each of those programs. However, as I just mentioned, we essentially almost never give multiple grants to the same awardee at the same time, and we never double fund a project under multiple different programs. So if you submit an application that's for the same scope of work under different programs, you should either indicate to us which one is sort of your preference, or you're essentially leaving it up to us as to evaluate the application under each of our programs and consider not only just the strengths of the application itself and the proposal, but also which program we think is the best fit for it.
Great. I don't think we have too many other questions that we haven't already answered, especially as I'm scrolling through this. If anyone is on the line and there are any lingering questions we have not answered, please submit it now. We'll try to get to it in the next 4 minutes. No?
And just to note that if you do think of anything after the webinar, you are welcome to submit questions to those addresses that are on the screen.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. As we said earlier, just a quick reminder, the Catalyst program is currently open and is accepting applications through September 24th at 4 p.m. The AmplifyMass program is rolling, so a little bit less of a time constraint, unless, of course, there is a time constraint on the project side. Just as a reminder for those two items, please visit our website, contact us with questions, and we greatly appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. Thank you.